Hello and welcome to this demonstration series. My name is Jason Paul and I'm the Managing Director for Apt Innovations here in Northern Ireland. Today we're at Downshire Caravans in Banbridge and I would like to give you a demonstration on our new patented and award-winning water drainage system, Flow. So let's get started. Now there are two reasons for this demonstration. The first is to talk to you a little bit about how water gets trapped in the water system of your caravan or camper, and not only how this water can do a lot of damage if it freezes in winter, but I also want to talk to you about how water can go stale in a very short space of time and the health and safety hazards that up until now have been largely overlooked. Now, without using expensive filtering techniques or having to pay a caravan engineer to carry out a drain down for you, I'd like to tell you about how we propose to drain a caravan or camper in a process that takes only 5 minutes. So what are the benefits to you? Well, you can have confidence in knowing that your vehicle will be totally protected against winter damage. And as a bonus, you'll be able to use your vehicle throughout the winter months and just take 5 minutes to drain it when you're finished. Also, and I think more importantly, as the process is simple and only takes 5 minutes, if you regularly blow out the water after your trips, or at least every couple of weeks through the summer season, you can be guaranteed of great fresh tasting water, removing the risks of illnesses such as E. coli and Legionnaire's disease. Now the second reason for the demonstration is to show you how to fit the Flow kit in under 30 seconds, and I'd also like to show you how to carry out your first drain down. Now what you'll see is by using a little bit of compressed air, you'll be able to push out all of that old stagnant and dead water out of the system, leaving it completely dry and fresh for your next trip. Now the last few winters have been particularly harsh and caravan and camper owners regularly complain of broken components due to frost, such as taps, filter bottles, water heaters and pumps. These get damaged of course because they are made of plastic that break in freezing temperatures. And remember of course that it only takes one frost to do that damage. Now this has nothing to do with draining the water tank or the water heater. The problem is that there is still water trapped in the pipes leading from the water tank to the taps, and it's this water that does the damage or carries the health risks. So to give you a basic idea of how a water system works, if we take a look at this diagram, you will see that a water tank is filled with water from an outside hose or suitable adapter. This water then sometimes travels through a second pump and filter depending on the make and model of the vehicle, and then it splits into two branches. The top branch travels as cold water onto the cold water taps in the kitchen, bathroom and shower, and then the bottom branch travels as cold water into the water heater where it is then heated and then travels on to the hot taps again in the same areas. Now let's say a typical caravan or camper is about 6 meters in length. That means there is at least 10 meters of hot and cold pipework running from front to back, and this pipework is filled with about 1 litre of water at any one time. Now normally an owner would drain the water tank and the water heater for protection from winter frost or to make the system fresh. However, draining both of these tanks will not remove the water from the pipes. Most owners know this, particularly due to the bad taste of the water, so they try other procedures. Some will try to suck out the water and some will try to blow the water back down through the system using their mouth over a tap. An important note though is that this method is very dangerous as it can lead to serious stress in the heart. It just takes too much pressure from the lungs to push this water out. Now both of these methods can be slightly effective, but it must be remembered that both are trying to suck or push the water back down through the system in reverse. Now some vehicles are fitted with a diaphragm pump that only allows water to travel one way, from the tank to the taps, but not in reverse, and others have a pipework system that travels up over wheel arches, which again can prove ineffective. Again, some water may have been removed and possibly no harm has come to the vehicle through frost, but certainly not all of it, and this can be a major problem. This remaining water will turn stagnant in a very short time, and depending on the temperature inside the vehicle, it will grow bacteria that could potentially contain diseases such as E. coli or Legionnaire's disease. So again, most owners know this, so they will use sterilising methods to push out the system and then try to flush out the sterilised water with fresh water. But in actual fact, the new fresh water only mixes with the sterilised water, so what you end up with is a water system that's partly full of stale water, sterilised water and fresh water. This is why there's such a bad taste. Now up until now the only people to see and smell this really dirty water were caravan engineers, and incidentally many of them now use Flow because to do any maintenance they would normally have had to disconnect parts of the water system in order to drain it. And now for them this turns a 45-minute job into a 5-minute job without dismantling the system. But through our practical research of draining out caravans and campers, and also working with the Water Regulations Advisory Scheme in the UK, we are now the only company in Europe and Scandinavia with a DIY product able to push out all of the water, including the low-lying stagnant dirt in the system. So not to bore you too much, I would like to explain a little bit about the science behind still water, and I promise you I will keep this quick. But I believe that this is a bit of information that every caravan and camper owner really needs to know. As we know, water comes from clouds, and it's here that the water mixes with oxygen, and it's that oxygen that keeps the water fresh. While on the ground, the water must keep moving to absorb oxygen to stay fresh. Now this is usually achieved in rivers, waterfalls and mountain rocks, etc. But after one day of not moving or lying in the pipes of a caravan or camper, the water will lose its oxygen. Try this at home. Fill a glass of water and leave it overnight. The next day you will notice bubbles in the water. This is the oxygen leaving the water, and it was this oxygen that was keeping the water fresh. Once it's gone, the water will start to absorb carbon dioxide from the air. It is at this point that you will notice that the water has no bubbles left in it, and that the water is now stale and dead. Now it is turning into acid water. Now, knowing this information, would you like to drink it? I know I certainly wouldn't. After 1 week it will start to taste bad, and after 2 weeks it is unfit for humans and should be thrown out. Within 28 days the water will have started to grow bacteria, and not to scare you too much, but there are many different types. The most common is E. coli and Legionnaire's disease. Now, Legionnaire's grows and multiplies between 25 and 45 degrees centigrade. Now, a camper may be sitting in the sunlight and the temperature may be only 20 degrees, but inside it will be much warmer and a perfect environment for this bacteria. E. coli is caught by swallowing food or water containing the bacteria and has symptoms such as diarrhea, and this is particularly risky for young children and the elderly. Legionnaire's, however, is an airborne disease and is caught by inhaling steam or mist into the lungs from the water in the shower or from washing dishes, for example. Legionnaire's symptoms are like the flu, with chills and a fever. Most people can fight this disease, but they will feel very ill for a few days. But it is extremely dangerous and sometimes fatal for young children, as their immune system is underdeveloped, and for some older people where their immune system is weakened through age or illness. For example, have you ever returned home from a weekend away and started the week with a flu, or maybe had diarrhea? Perhaps you thought that this was because you sat outside for too long when it was cold, or that you maybe ate something that was, say, out of date or not cooked properly. How do you know it wasn't a case of Legionnaire's or E. coli? So many of these cases go unreported. As an organisation, we believe that this issue is a health and safety risk and should be taken more seriously, which is why we have raised it with various water organisations and caravan clubs. These organisations are now taking the problem very seriously indeed and have published many reports. Now, as I mentioned before, although owners may not know all of the facts about water diseases, they do know that the water tastes bad. In fact, people that I speak to say that the water tastes like plastic from the water system. This is a very common misunderstanding. The reason is that the water has turned to acid and gives off that bad taste. To battle these problems, for years people have used filtering and sterilising methods. Now, we're not against these methods. In fact, we would actively encourage owners to sterilise their water systems, but only at the start and at the end of the season. But we must understand that the water inside the pipes is dead. There really is no point trying to make it drinkable. Obviously, the best thing to do is to get rid of it and start again. So let's say we're at the start or the end of the summer season. What we suggest is that you use flow to blow out that old stale water, as it is no use to you. Then you fill the water tank with fresh water and a sterilising product and run that through the taps. Once the system is sterilised, then blow out that water, leaving the system completely empty, clean and fresh, ready for your new water. With the fresh water, I personally would still let the taps run for a moment, but I promise you that you will notice a massive difference. Your water will taste great without the taste of stale water or steriliser, and no more need for bottled water. Of course, to keep your water fresh, I would take 5 minutes to blow it out, probably after every trip or at least every couple of weeks, and then sterilise it at the end of the season. So I hope I haven't scared you off water for life, but it is worth considering these facts even if you do buy bottled water. Since you keep your caravans and campers in perfect condition, why not keep the water clean and fresh as well? Being a caravanner myself with 2 young children, I would argue that clean fresh water was more important, even if it wasn't for drinking and just for washing ourselves and dishes. And as a bonus, you won't have to pay anyone to drain down your vehicle for winter storage. In fact, as the drain down only takes 5 minutes, you can use your vehicle right through the winter months and then drain it when you're finished. It really is that simple and effective. So we intend to carry out this drain down procedure by using our new patented water drainage system, Flow. And this particular demonstration is for owners with European caravans and campers. So what do we have here in the pack? Well, on the right is our flow device, and I'll talk to you about that in a second. On the left here at the top we have a closing valve, and at the bottom we have a T-valve for air to get access to the water system. Also at the bottom here you will notice 4 little adapters to allow you to connect these 2 components to the water system. Now what you will also find in the pack is a DVD, and that will explain more about winter damages and the dangers of stale water. It will also show you how to fit the components and finally show you how to carry out your first drain down. Now on the pack there are instructions and some precautions, and we recommend that you read these thoroughly. Remember, you are working with compressed air, so we just want you to be safe. So how do we intend to get the water out of a caravan or camper? Well, it's by using our new patented Flow device, which won the award for UK Caravan Accessory of the Year 2012. Now at this end we have a green 1/2-inch threaded connector which will connect to the T-valve and get access to push the air into the water system. And at the other end we have a valve that is similar to what you would find on a car wheel or a bicycle. This is connected to an air supply such as a foot pump or a bicycle pump, but most people would use a little 12-volt compressor, the sort that you may already have for putting air into your car tyres, that plugs into the cigarette lighter of your car or caravan or camper. Now just before I move on, there is a grey threaded adapter underneath this green one. Now by disconnecting and unscrewing the green adapter, this can be attached to a power hose to drain it, as many internal tanks are broken in winter. In addition, by purchasing a typical hose adapter from a DIY shop, you can connect it to your garden hose and drain it in the spray gun, as these 2 will shatter in a winter frost. Or you can connect it to an outside tap or washing machine connection at your holiday home or home. Now this is a great little tool for a few reasons. Making sure that you turn off your water at the main stopcock first of all. You can then use it to drain your home if you're leaving it for a while through winter and don't wish to leave your heating switched on. This will save you money during that period. Next, you can drain pipes and specific pipes in the house for maintenance. Now you may want to fit a new kitchen tap, for example. It is also useful that it is not possible to solder a pipe when it has water in it, so just drain the tap at the end of that pipe. But the best application we have found is Flow is for cleaning the inside of your gas or oil boiler's heat exchanger. This is a box where the water is heated before it goes onto the hot taps. Now over time this box fills with dirt and your water will not heat as well as it should. So owners usually turn up the thermostat until eventually it will fail and a new one will need to be fitted. Now heat exchangers can cost more than €1,000, and after a few years they will fail. Now Flow creates air turbulence when pushing through the boiler, and this cleans out the dirt. You will notice this when you turn your water back on and run a hot tap, because the water that comes out will be a brown liquid. It will extend the life of your heat exchanger and you will be able to turn down the thermostat, saving you money on gas or oil. So to find out more about this, go to our website and watch the video for draining down cabins and static caravans. Okay, back to the task at hand. Just like the demonstration board earlier on, what we're going to do is build up a little bit of air pressure inside the water system, a little bit like blowing air into a balloon, and that air will act like a coiled spring. Once air has been pushed into the system and you open a tap, the water leading from the tank to that tap is going to be pushed out. Then we're going to repeat the process for the rest of the taps and the shower, etc. Now the good thing about this system is that it will also push through the water heater, protecting it in winter, and onto the hot taps so that they're drained also. But before we do that, we must get access to the water system with a couple of components. Now there are 2 components that we need to fit to the water system. The first is this. This is a closing valve, and this needs to be fitted as close to the water tank as possible. And the second is a T-valve, and this needs to be fitted about 5 centimeters from the closing valve on the tap side of the pipe, as you can see. This is a threaded connector here which allows us to connect Flow onto the end. So as I mentioned, to be most effective we need to fit the components as close to the start of the water system as we can. Now the best place for this is right beside the water tank, and we need to fit the components on the water pipe leading from the tank to the taps. Now this means that we will be pushing the water from this point through the system and out of the taps, but there will still be a bit of water in the submersible pump inside the tank and the pipe leading up to the closing valve. But that's okay, because we will drain the tank first, and then by opening a tap we can then run the submersible pump on an empty tank for a few moments, and this should be enough to push whatever water is in the pump and the pipe past our components. It's then our job to push the remaining water out of the pipes to the taps. So fitting these two components involves cutting the pipe leading to the taps, and I'll show you in a moment, and it's a very simple DIY procedure. But if you do feel uncomfortable doing it, a qualified service engineer at your local caravan centre will be more than qualified to do it for you at a small fee. Now this water pipe shouldn't be confused with a second pipe that you will sometimes see coming out of the tank. That is the pipe called the overflow, and it leads to the outside of the caravan, and its purpose is to spill water out of it if the tank is overfilled. Again, a service engineer can help you identify which pipe to use. Now as I mentioned, when we push air into the system using flow, it's like putting air into a balloon. If there is a hole in a balloon, the air will escape, and this is exactly what happens in a caravan or camper. If we blow air into the tank, the air will escape through the overflow pipe. So we fix this problem by placing the closing valve about 15 centimeters from the tank entry. Once that's fitted and closed, it gives the ability to cut off the tank, and when we want to do a drain down, any air will now be pushed in the direction of the taps. The next component to fit is the T-valve, and this gives us access to the water system. Now for best results we want to place this component about 5 centimeters from the closing valve on the side of the taps. But sometimes, especially with campers, there is not enough space because the water pipe drops over the side of the tank, or the pump is right beside the tank. Try if you can to get it beside the closing valve, but if you can't, then place it as close to the other side of the second pump if it's present. Then, before you drain the system with flow, make sure you open a tap and run the pumps on a dry tank for a few moments, and this should push whatever water was in the pump out beyond the T-valve. But like I say, try to place it before the pump. Also, while we're discussing campers, sometimes you will notice that there is very little space around or on top of the water tank to fit flow. Through our experience, you may be able to fit the components at the side of the tank, or sometimes you may notice two deep tracks running from the front to the back of the tank. If you have these tracks, you can fit the components on the pipes above these tracks. Now doing this, you will need to make sure that you can close the lid, as again there may not be much space. If this is a problem, then fit the components upside down so that the levers are in the tracks. Try setting them like this on the tank, and then make sure you can close the lid before cutting the pipes though. So to fit the components, we need to make two cuts in the main water pipe leading to the taps. As mentioned, we make the first cut 15 centimeters from the entry of the tank, and the second about 5 centimeters further towards the taps. Now in the UK, a semi-rigid 12mm pipe is used in most water systems, and some European manufacturers use this also, such as Adria. This will simply push fit straight into the closing valve and the T-valve, where it will be held in place. However, most European and Scandinavian vehicles use a 10mm internal diameter flexible hose pipe, a bit like a garden hose. This pipe will not push into the components, but in the pack you will see 4 little connectors like this. These are designed for European hoses. As you can see here, you simply push the straight end into the component, and then the water pipe fits over the barbed sharp end. There is a little lug at the end of each component, okay, and if you pull that back, then you can remove the pipe or the adapter again. Now you may need to use a hairdryer or a cup of hot water to soften the ends of the pipe to fit the connectors. So now you just simply fit both of the components, but please note when fitting the closing valve, make sure to follow the direction of the flow of the water. The end of the lever should be closest to the tank, and it should look like this when it's finished. Now before you carry out any work to the water system, make sure to turn the water pumps off at the control panel. This will stop any excess water pumping out whenever you cut into the water pipe. Also, as we're going to drain the water heater, we need to make sure that we turn that off as well. The easiest way to turn both of them off is to turn off the main master switch for the electricity. Okay, so we're going to fit the components now, and just before I cut this particular pipe, I have another type of pipe here, which is the same European 10mm braided kind of pipe, like I say, a little bit like garden hose. And the easiest way to cut that is just to get a pair of pipe cutters or a pair of secateurs for cutting branches on trees. Just put it in nice and straight, okay, and then just pull down and you'll get a nice clean edge. Okay, so that's what we're going to do with the pipe here. Now, okay, so what we have, as I say, the first component we're going to fit is our closing valve, and making sure that our tail is facing up to the entry to the tank, so that the flow of the water is going to travel this way to the pipes. So I'm going to cut it with, there's a little label here, so I'm just going to cut it, say, a little bit forward of that. So what we can do is just take our cutters again, get the pipe nice and straight in the cutters and clip through. Now what you'll find sometimes is that there's a little bit of thread or cord in here that just runs up the side of the pipe. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is to fit our components. So as I said before, we can't use this pipe to fit straight into this closing valve, so what we must do is use these little adapters, and they will connect the component to the pipe. So we take the straight edge, okay, just the straight smooth edge, and push it in to the component. And we'll take another one. Now be careful not to use the sharp barbed edge into here, because it's hard to get it back out again, but with the straight edge, push that back in, and that's it, ready. Now you may need to, like I say, use hot water, or what you can use is a hairdryer, just to soften the ends of these particular pipes. Okay, so it doesn't take very much heat just to soften them up a little bit. Okay, so what you can do then is fit your part. So just push it up in and connect it up. And that's it, that's the first part connected. Now, some particular hoses are made of silicone, and by being made of silicone, they're a little bit softer and a little bit more slippy, but there are very, very few caravans or campers with these. Now, although we don't supply them, you could use one of these. It's a little hose clamp that just tightens with a screwdriver, and of course you could put that on here just if you wanted to be extra safe, or if you do come across these particular silicone hoses. Now, like I say, we don't supply them because they're very, very rare. So anyway, so that's the first one, and that, as you can see, is a really firm fit now that that's pushed in. What we want to do then is fit our T. So what we're going to do is fit the T valve about 5 centimeters away from the closing valve, and that just gives enough room for the little adapter, the end of the adapter, coming up to about here and coming up to about here. So let's cut that through. Okay, and again with the T, push the straight end into there, push the straight end into there, and that's ready to be fitted. And again, just heat, and that's it. Again, it doesn't take very much heat. So what we do is just connect the barbed connector into each end, like so, and that's the parts fitted. Okay, so how are we going to get air into our water system? Well, we can start from the most basic and go through to the most advanced and sophisticated. What you can use is something simple. Here is a bicycle pump. This is the push up and down plunger type. What we have here as well is the trusty foot pump, and as I say, these will have these particular connections on them that would fit a car tire or a bicycle tire. Now, the only problem with these particular devices, they will work, but they will just take a little bit more time to get air into the system, particularly as you drain more and more taps. You need to fill that system with more and more air to build up that pressure. Most people would then use compressors. These are the typical little 12-volt compressors that would plug into the cigarette lighter of your car or your Caravan or your camper. Now this one here has a little gauge on it, and as does this one. This one is just like a cordless drill, so you just connect it up, pull the trigger, and it will enter air into the system. I personally like to use digital systems. Now you can see this one here And these you can pick up in pretty much most car accessory places or caravan shops. This one here has a digital readout, which means that you can actually set the digital pressure on there. And again, it just plugs into the cigarette lighter of your car. And as I say, maybe you already have these types of devices at home. Now, the one that I particularly like is this one here. Again, it's a 12-volt battery pack, but it has its own power. And it comes with things such as these jump leads, just in case your battery goes flat in your car. Now, as much as it has other bits and pieces here, what I particularly like it for is, again, it has its air connection at the back here. But it also has a digital readout. Now, in particular, and if you are going for a digital compressor, what I would advise you to do is to get one that actually resets itself after you lose pressure. We're going to blow water out of a tap, so therefore we will lose that air pressure. What you want is perhaps a compressor that will actually sense that that pressure has dropped, and then it will restart again. It just means that you don't have to continually reset it. Now, we get asked by many people if they can use a screw thread connection from a foot pump or a compressor, and that's this one, and the answer is yes. The end of flow is a typical Schrader valve, so you can use a clamp connection or a threaded connection. So whatever device you use to push air into the system, make sure you check that the gauge is reliable. The easiest way to do this is to check it on a car tyre. Take it to a local petrol station and try their airline on your tyre and make a note of the pressure. Then try your own compressor or foot pump. So what pressure do we need to push out the water? Well, when you open a water tap, water will come out under pressure, and it is the electric pump in the camper that gives you that pressure. Now, that pressure is measured in bar. So in a caravan or camper, it will be about 1 bar, which is equivalent to 15 psi. And in the home, it will be about 2 to 3 bar, depending on where you live. So all we're trying to do is copy the normal pump pressure to push out the water. So we want to set our compressor here to 1 bar 15 psi. The safety point though is that your pump is actually factory tested to 1.5 bar 20 psi, and we want to stay under that pressure just to be safe. So please do not put any more pressure into the system, because apart from damaging components in the water system, it won't make any difference, as you will soon see. Also, when you do pressurize the system, don't leave it like that for more than 1 minute without releasing the pressure. This again is just a safety measure. Okay, so now that the components are fitted, we're ready to carry out our first drain down. So we need to do a few things to prepare for that. So first of all, we need to drain the water tank and the water heater. This is done either by opening the little yellow or white dump valves beside them, or indeed unscrewing the overflow pipe here. Now, a quick tip is that if you open a tap inside, you will stop any vacuum occurring and the water will drain out much faster. Okay, now that both are drained, just make sure that you close the dump valve for the water heater again. Now, you don't have to close the dump valve or the overflow for the water tank, as we will be closing that off anyway. But make sure you close all of the taps in the caravan or camper so that the system is sealed. Now, you will remember that there is a submersible pump and a small length of water pipe leading up to our components. So now that you have drained the water tank, we need to remove the water in the pump and the pipe. So to get rid of the water, make sure that the closing valve is open and that the T valve is closed. Now, turn on the electric water pump at the control panel and open a cold tap for about 15 seconds. Not much water will come out, if any, but it will be enough. You could also open the T valve and collect the water in a cloth, but it's up to you. Now that's done, make sure to turn the pump off again. Okay, so now it's flow's turn to drain the rest of the vehicle. So we need to close off the tank to completely seal the water system for building up air pressure. So close the closing valve and open the T valve. Okay, so now that the tank is closed off, the tank and the heater dump valves are closed and all of the taps are closed, the system is now totally sealed and ready for draining. Okay, so we're now ready to fit flow and whatever air supply we have to push air into the system. In this case, it's this compressor here. Now, just with flow, pull back the outer casing and separate the two parts of flow and screw the green connection onto the T valve. You can of course leave it like this and then connect flow to it whenever you want to drain down the system, so just push it on until you hear a click. Next we need to connect the compressor, so connect it firmly and we're now ready. Okay, so now we're ready to drain the system, so quickly I will explain the process. We'll pressurise the system to 1 bar and open our first tap to drain out the water. Once that's drained, close the tap to seal the system again, and then we will repeat the procedure for the rest of the taps. So it doesn't really matter where you start, but I usually start in the kitchen, then the bathroom sink, then the shower. But it's important that you drain both the hot and the cold taps, as there are 2 pipes leading to them. You can do this by moving the mixer tap from the left and then to the right. But looking at the water system diagram again, you can see that the system is completely full of water. Now this doesn't give us much space to fill with air, so whatever tap you start with, make sure after the drain down you return to that tap and drain both the hot and the cold taps just to be sure that it's empty. Finally, some water may have been pushed into the water heater, so we will pressurize the system one last time and open the water heater dump valves. Okay, so the system is sealed and flow and the compressor are connected, so now we're ready to set the compressor to 1 bar 15 psi and pressurize the system. So now that the compressor has pressurized the system up to 1 bar or 15 psi, we're now ready to drain our first tap. Now I'm in the kitchen here, and what I've done is to turn the tap all the way to the cold side so that we can drain the cold water pipe. So what I would recommend is that you carry a little cloth like this so that you can hold it over the end of the tap, because the air is going to follow the water out of the tap. Now when this happens, what you'll notice is a large spray of water and air which will bounce off the bottom of the sink, and it just stops the water from spraying over us. Also, I'm going to use this glass jug just to show you how much water we take out of the system and to show you the still condition of it. Now when you drain the tap, remember to close it afterwards so that the compressor can pressurize the system again. So let's just get that drained now. Okay, so the compressor has built back up and we can now drain the hot water pipe. Now you will notice that the compressor takes more time to build up that pressure, and that's because as water is removed it leaves more space for air to fill. Now this is good, as more air makes the drain down more successful. So to drain the hot tap here, all we need to do is push the lever all the way to the left, and remembering to use your cloth, release. Okay, so the system has been pressurized up to 1 bar 15 psi, and we can now drain this particular tap in the bathroom. So we just push it all the way to cold, and remembering our cloth, then we just release. So now the cold pipe has been drained, we'll close it and push it all the way to the hot and build up the pressure again. Now as you can see here, this is a particularly long Caravan, so there's quite a lot of water trapped in those particular pipes. In fact, it's about to fill our jug over, and the jug is about 1.2, 1.3 litres. So let's just move that over to the hot, okay, and then we'll release. So it's going to pour over the top here. We'll just remember our cloth. Okay, so it's important that we drain the shower because you really don't want any components getting broken in behind here in winter. So when the pressure is built up again, we'll just push the lever all the way to cold and release. Now we'll just hold the shower head down and make sure that all the water comes out. Okay. Okay, so that's the cold pipe drained. We'll just close the tap again and push it all the way to hot. So now we can pressurize the shower up again and drain the hot side of the pipes. Okay, so now that all the taps are drained, I would drain the first taps again. Now you don't have to drain the bathroom and the shower again, but there is a good reason for draining the first tap once more. Now, as I mentioned before, when you drained this tap first of all, the system was completely full of water. Now this didn't give us much space to push air into it, so it is only after the first tap is drained that you create that space. So now that the entire system is drained, we just want to drain the first tap again to make sure that all the water is drained out of those pipes. So we'll just push it all the way to cold and release. So we'll just push it all the way to hot. Okay, so that's the system almost drained, but I just wanted to stop for a second and talk to you about any other places that we can drain. Now some caravans and campers are fitted with an outside tap so that you can wash the dog or water boots, etc. So we need to drain that tap as well. Next, as I mentioned earlier, we may have pushed some water into the water heater, so we need to get that water out. So just pressurise the system and open the dump valves beside the water heater. Once you do this, whatever water is in there will spray out underneath. Finally, and this is not completely necessary, some caravans and campers are fitted with submersible pumps in the water tank that allow water to travel through them both forwards and backwards. But it really depends on the make and model of the vehicle. Now, you may remember that there was a little bit of trapped water between the submersible pump in the water tank up to our closing valve. Now, we have already drained that by running the pump on an empty tank, but if the pump allows it, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't just try to blow through it. So we just pressurise the system one last time and then open the closing valve. If the pump allows water to be pushed through it in reverse, the pressure will drop. Now, it's not that important as it will probably be empty anyway, but it's just a little extra to be sure. Now, if the air doesn't go through the pump, the system will stay pressurised, so just open any tap to release that pressure. Now, especially for winter, we want to make sure that there is absolutely no water left in the system, as this could be damaging to some of the components. So we want to protect four in particular: the water heater, the pumps, the filter bottle and the taps, because these are very prone to breaking in winter. So we have already blown out the water heater, so now that is protected. What I would then do is turn off the pumps at the control panel and open a tap. This will again run the pumps on a dry tank, making sure they are dry and protected. Also, if there is a filter bottle beside any onboard pump, you will usually find that the bottle hangs down below the pipe. When the vehicle is drained, the air will have passed over the bottle, and so it will probably still have water in it. In winter, this may freeze and crack if there is water in it, so just unscrew the bottle and remove any water that may be in there. Finally, and this is very important, whether it is summer or winter, after you drain the vehicle, you must open the dump valves in the water tank and the water heater. Also, you need to leave all of the taps in the open position in the kitchen, bathroom and shower. If you have mixer taps, just centre and raise the lever, and this will open both the hot and the cold pipes. Now, there are two reasons for this. In summer, air will be able to circulate around the water system, keeping it fresh, and in winter, not only will this protect the taps, but should any water still be in the system, which is unlikely, it will allow the water to freeze and expand up the pipes and not burst out of any components. And that's it. The flow drainage kit has been fitted and the drain down has been carried out, and that should keep you protected through the winter months without your pipes freezing and damaging the vital components of your water system. Also, if you carry out a drain down, say every couple of weeks throughout the summer season, you can be guaranteed of great tasting fresh water and not have to buy bottled water. But remember, you should sterilise the system, but only at the start and at the end of the summer season. But as you can see, we have taken out, I'd say, about a litre and a half from the water system, and this could do a lot of damage in winter. But although this water is terrible looking, I'm glad to see it, because now it's in this jug and not in the Caravan for someone to drink, particularly children and the elderly. Now, the more regularly you drain the vehicle, the more transparent the water will look. But as you can see, without draining, this is how the water will look. Now, aside from any bacteria, it will just taste really bad. Now, we would like to help, so if you have any questions, then please send them to the email address at the bottom of the screen. And if you can, please send them in English so that we can help you faster. But please remember to read the instructions and precautions on the back of the pack. And remember to not to use more than 1 bar or 15 psi in your system. Finally, as a company, we just want to make sure that our customers are happy and our product does what it's supposed to do. So first of all, there is a lifetime warranty on all of our parts. So if a part does break through no fault of your own, please get in touch and we will replace them for you. Also, if for any reason you're not happy with your flow system within 9 months, bring it back to the shop where you bought it, or if you bought it from us, just follow your returns policy on the internet and send it back to us and you can have a full refund. But let's hope you have a successful experience and that that's not necessary. So I'd like to thank Downshire Caravans for their very, very kind participation in making this film, and I'd like to wish you future health and happiness with your caravan or camper, and thank you for watching.